welcome back to the Be a Better You podcast. I am your host and subconscious reprogramming expert, as well as emotional abuse recovery mentor, Allison K. Dagny. So today's episode might make you a little uncomfortable, but you know me, I find that leaning into discomfort is where the healing is, and I also think it could set some of you free. I want to talk about something that most of us spend our entire lives trying to avoid, which is disappointing other people. And if you're anything like I used to be, you probably work really hard to keep people happy. You over-explain yourself or justify your decisions. Maybe you feel guilty just saying no or holding a boundary. You even worry about hurting people's feelings or making somebody angry or being misunderstood. But today, I want to challenge all of that because learning how to disappoint people could actually be one of the healthiest skills you'll ever develop. So first, I want to tell you a story. Now, several years ago, I had a friend in my life who had been there for a really, really long time, and our relationship had grown into friendship, but also a business relationship. And so we had a lot of history together. We shared experiences, inside jokes, conversations, family events, holidays, all of this stuff. And this was something that I believe was a mutually respectful friendship. But over time, something started to change inside of me. And it wasn't that this other person became a bad person, but it was that I started to realize that they had written a script about me for who they believed that I should be without really either of us realizing it. Me personally, had been cast into a role. And sometimes this happens. And so it's really important to be aware of. I was cast into this role of a supportive friend, great. An agreeable business partner, maybe not so great. I was cast into the role of a person who would prioritize other people's expectations before my own needs. And for a long time, I played this role because it felt easier than challenging it or easier than questioning it or going against it. But the problem was this: it didn't fit me anymore. And every interaction left me feeling more and more drained. And sometimes I would maybe feel tension in my body when it came to certain things, or I'd receive a message that didn't feel right, and I'd get the familiar knot in my stomach before ever being able to process anything else. And this wasn't because that this person was inherently bad or doing something terrible, but I had slowly stopped showing up as my true self. I was showing up as a version of me in the relationship that this person expected. And that's not good. And I've learned a lot about this, and that's why I want to share it with you. So something then happened in our business relationship, and I'm not going to share all the details because it's a personal situation, but there was a decision to make, and this friend of mine wanted me to handle it one specific type of way. And I decided to do it a different way. I chose something different. And I didn't do this to hurt them. I didn't do this to punish them. I didn't do this to be mean to them or anything like that. I just had to make a decision that was aligning with my values, with my personal life, with my business, and what felt right for me. So it was one decision. It was also a boundary, but it was a time where I decided to choose myself. And guess what? This person was disappointed. Actually, this person was angry, and ultimately the relationship didn't survive this. And at first, I started to question myself a little bit, did I do something wrong? And then I kept going back and forth, no, because I know this was the right thing to do. But there's always that part of you that's maybe I should have handled it differently, or maybe I could have explained myself better. But really, after I sat with it for a while, I realized something that completely changed how I think about disappointment. And I hadn't destroyed the relationship. I just stopped playing a role that was not mine to play. Now, this idea of disappointment actually came from a really good friend of mine. She's been on the podcast before. Her name is Heather Hutzel. And we were having coffee one day, and she was talking about the word disappointment. And she was explaining how if you unappoint someone or you disappoint someone, you are taking back the authority to appoint yourself. And I was like, oh, and my brain was just light bulbs everywhere. So this experience with my friend, who's no longer my friend, it made me realize something, that sometimes disappointing somebody just means that you're no longer agreeing to that version of you that they created in their mind, okay? So you're not living up to what they have created, the pedestal they put you on, or the box that they put you in, or the description that they made up of you, okay? So people don't just have expectations, they have stories attached to them, stories about who you should be, how available you should be to them, how generous or kind or how forgiving or how often you should pick up the phone, how much access they should have to you, how their influence should be able to influence you, how much money you should spend or how much time you should give or what your life should look like. And when you stop participating in their story, they're going to call it disappointing. Now, you could be on the flip side of this too. So we need to recognize that we might think other people are disappointing us. Oh, you didn't behave how I wanted, you're disappointing me. Oh, you didn't do that, you disappointed me, right? So think of it from both sides of the equation. You might have expectations of other people about how you think that they should be showing up. And this is the work that I do with the subconscious, that one of the least favorite words in the entire English language for me is the word should, because it has this connotation that other people or the world or what you should, quote unquote, should do is how it should be. And those are just beliefs. And if we just go along with the shoulds, then yeah, of course we are going to be disappointed. This is something that your brain might struggle to grasp. That is very normal, especially if this is like very new to you, the healing aspect and, moving towards your growth. But once you start to get into this and once you start really challenging these things, you start to release so much tension. You start to feel so much better and you start to have like this weight lifted off of your shoulders. So here's a thought I want to present to you. Disappointment, like if you feel disappointed or if someone is disappointed with you, is temporary, okay? But living out of alignment with yourself can last decades. So each time you try not to disappoint someone, you could be abandoning yourself. You could be living out of alignment. You could be not really being the truest, most authentic version of yourself. So I just want you to think about that, because one uncomfortable conversation versus 20 years of abandoning yourself, these are very different prices to pay, especially for your healing. So like my friend had said, that disappointing people could really just be unappointing them. Somewhere along the way, we appoint people into positions that they were never really meant to have. That we appoint them as the authority over our choices. Maybe our parents, maybe our spouses, maybe our friends, our family members, right? They become the authority of our happiness, the authority over our career choices, the authority over our parenting styles or our relationships or what we want to do with our lives and our dreams. And then one day we're like, actually, you don't get that position anymore. I'm taking that back. Every time that you hold a boundary or you have a true, authentic no, right? That is simply restoring you into your own authority. This isn't about you rejecting them or hurting them or trying to make them feel bad or anything like that. No. You could look at it like you're firing them from a job that they were never supposed to have. Okay? Because why did they get that role? Why did they get that authority over you? Aren't you your own authority? So that's something to think about. Now, you could be listening to this and thinking, well, but I don't even know what I want, Allison. Sometimes I don't know what decisions to make or where to go or what I want to do with my life or how to do this or how to do that, right? And I get that. Especially when we've been abused, we lose ourselves, we feel like we've lost our identities. If our purpose feels unclear, we're not sure, right? Then what happens to us is other people's opinions start to be very persuasive. Ooh, well, they say I should do this, or oh, they said I should do this. I remember so clearly when I was married to my ex-husband, I couldn't make a decision to save my life. It was so hard. And if I was struggling with something, I would call every single person I had in my phone. I'd call my mother-in-law, I'd call my sister-in-law, I'd call my mom, I'd call my stepmom, I called friends, I would call my dad, I would call as many people as I could because I just needed other people's opinions because I didn't have that authority over myself. So maybe somebody says, oh, you should do this, you should start a business, or oh, you should move out of the state and go live with your family, or you should stay at your job, don't quit, right? Or whatever it is. People are going to have their opinions. People are going to tell you what they think that you should do, but you then are giving them authority on your life. This is one thing I don't do in my coaching program. I do not give advice. People might be like, what? How do you not give advice? Well, because if I'm giving you advice based on my personal experience, it's going to taint whatever I tell you, right? If you're telling me that if somebody comes to me and says, I'm in an emotionally abusive relationship, I don't know what to do, blah, 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 blah. Well, what do you think my advice would be? It would be, you need to leave. You need to get out. You need to get out, right? Because I have that same experience and I'm going to taint that by saying you need to do it too. But what if your experience isn't exactly like mine? What if you have, I don't know, a partner who has made threats to actually harm you and your children? My ex didn't do that. So that would be bad advice for me to advise you to do that, right? Because I'm leading with my advice. So what I do instead is I help you figure out what you want and then figure out why you're not there yet, which is based on your subconscious beliefs. So if you want to move, or if you want to do this, or if you have a desire to start a business, or whatever that might be, then my job is to say, okay, well, let me help you get there. My job isn't to tell you, oh, that's wrong, or oh, you shouldn't do that, or that's not a good idea. Now, if I truly feel like maybe you're making an emotional decision or something like that, we need to like get some clarity around it, then I'll help you do that. But I'm never going to be like, oh, don't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or you should do this instead. That's not my role. My role is to give you information, to give you insight, to give you clarity, and help you find the answers within yourself. So sometimes I feel like this is important to bring up because a lot of times when you've been emotionally abused, you haven't had a lot of authority over yourself. And so you may try to get advice and try to lean on others, and then sometimes that backfires because it's not really based on what you need and want. And if you're not trusting your voice, you're borrowing other people's. If you're not trusting your own decision making, you're leaning on others to do that for you. So empowerment is key here, right? So if we're going to heal, we need to be able to experience this from within. Now, this is also, I feel like, a little interesting, is that sometimes when we disappoint those people, we disappoint those outside voices, it actually is exactly what gives you the quiet to be able to hear your own voice. Because when you disappoint someone, there's this like level of discomfort that comes with it. But in that moment, you get to question yourself, like, why am I feeling uncomfortable with this? Or what is this bringing up for me? And that reflection gives you more clarity to hear your voice. Because when we're talking about purpose and we don't know maybe what our purpose is, or we don't really have a strong sense of identity at this point, right? That doesn't always come up in these situations, and that's why we're leaning on other people. Sometimes the boundary comes first. Saying no is actually what helps you create that space for your own knowing to come through. To say, you know what, I'm not saying you're wrong, friend, person, whoever thinks that I should be doing this, but I need to just figure this out on my own. I'm not going to do it. I'm not just saying no because I'm trying to be defiant, but I just need to say no so that I can come to the clarity on my own. And that sometimes can be really, really powerful. Now, before we keep going here, because I am going to talk about the benefits of disappointing people, I just want to take a minute to tell you about the resources that I've created for women who are trying to heal after emotionally abusive, unhealthy, or toxic relationships. So whether you're trying to stop thinking about your ex or the pain or all the things that are happening, whether you're trying to rebuild confidence in yourself or figure out why you still feel stuck, or maybe you're just looking for the next step. Like, what do I do next? I don't know where to go. Well, I've created resources for every stage of that journey. So you can get books, you can get courses, guided programs, the My Sound Mind audio library, the Radiate and Rise community that I've developed for women. And it's all designed to help you understand what's happening inside your own subconscious mind and your nervous system so you can finally experience real peace. So if you're not sure where to start, I also offer a free root cause assessment and action plan that you can get on my website as well. So you can find everything at radiateandrise.com, and the link will be in the show notes. So let's get back. If you are listening to this and you're nodding along like, yep, this is me, and you're ready to actually shift this and not just keep managing and coping, I invite you to schedule a free call from the link in the show notes. On that call, we're going to look at where you're at right now, where you want to be emotionally, and start uncovering what is actually in the way. And then I'm going to give you my recommendations and point you in the right direction if any of my programs might feel like a fit. And if it's aligned, we'll move forward. If not, you still leave with some clarity. All right, now let's get back to the episode. To the benefits of disappointing people. Now, you might not like to hear that there are benefits of disappointing people, because if you yourself have been disappointed, you know that's not something that you like. Most of us don't like the feeling of disappointment, but the thing I want you to understand about disappointment is that it's when reality and expectations do not match up, okay? So when reality and expectations do not match up, we suffer emotionally. So I want you to think about if you are planning a vacation and you have this expectation of this wonderful vacation. The weather's beautiful, the water is crystal clear, the people are amazing, the travel is perfect, and then when you get there, everything ends up being horrible. And you're disappointed, right? You're thinking, wow, like, what a disappointment, because I had expected everything to be so good. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have hope or have expectations. I have other podcast episodes on that. But the point here is that when you are willing to disappoint other people, you can start filtering your relationships better. Okay, so here's what I mean by this. The people who only love or accept the version of you that they could control often start to fall away. Okay, the people who genuinely love you, they adjust to this. They respect your no, they respect your boundaries, and they still love you even when you say no, or even when you quote unquote don't meet their expectations or disappoint them. So you end up reclaiming your time, you end up reclaiming your energy, you stop spending your life managing everybody else's emotions, because, as I said before on many episodes, other people's emotions are not your responsibility. They're their responsibility to process, okay? So people will grow in this too, because sometimes when we're told no, we have to feel that discomfort. Sometimes when somebody disappoints us, we have to process that, okay? So there are benefits to disappointing people. Am I saying we should go around just like actively trying to disappoint people? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But it's a possibility that there's benefits to it. That's all I'm trying to say. People learn that disappointment is not an emergency. They learn that you're a person with your own needs, that you get to choose and make decisions for your own life. And maybe most importantly, you become someone that your nervous system can finally trust. And the more you do this, and the more you really align with yourself instead of just going along with what everyone else wants, right? You start to feel like lighter, and you start to feel that it becomes easier to do each time, because it's practice, right? So every time you abandon yourself to avoid disappointing others, you're teaching yourself that everybody else's needs matter than your own, and then this becomes a belief. So you probably, if you do this, already have these belief systems inside of you. If this happened when you were a child, where you had to manage your parents' emotions, or you had to do something to avoid disappointing other people, then you start learning that, well, my needs don't matter and everybody else is more important than me. So every time that you disappoint someone, right, lovingly, I'm not saying we're going out and about trying to like, oh, my like, I'm not talking about, what's the word? Rebellion. That's not what I mean. Lovingly disappointing, like, that's not right for me. Like, let's say, I'll use an extreme example, but let's say your parents are both doctors and you come from a long line of doctors, and then everybody's expecting you to be a doctor and you want to be an artist. You're going to disappoint them. Like, it's not like you're saying, I refuse to be a doctor. You just are saying, that's not for me. And I'm sorry that that disappoints you, but I need to be true to myself, right? So you're teaching yourself something different when you lovingly disappoint, right? That you're teaching yourself that you can trust yourself. I hope this is all landing well, but I want to leave you with one final thought here. Other people's disappointment is really just about the story that they wrote, okay? What they think, what their expectations are, what their shoulds are. This is not just truth, right? These are beliefs. These are what people think. Beliefs are just any thought that is not 100% true for 100% of people 100% of the time. And most people become disappointed when reality doesn't match those expectations that they created. So you might even experience this yourself. Like, if you have expectations that your child is going to be a soccer star just like you were, and then they just have no interest in it and they don't want to do it and they resist, right? Then you might feel disappointed because you had this expectation, okay? But we need to start shifting that too. Not only like taking back our power when other people are disappointed in us, but also what are our expectations that we're putting on other people, maybe unfairly? Like, this is part of the healing work. So sometimes what we need to do is write a different story about our expectations, and other people have to write a different story about their expectations on us. The problem is oftentimes other people aren't doing that kind of deep reflection. And if that's true and they aren't and they're disappointed, that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to you. So each time that you choose that alignment over someone else's approval, what you're doing is you're giving other people permission to do the same. So when I do this, and I've done it and I do it a lot, people ask me for things and I have to disappoint them. I have to say, I can't do that for you, or I'm not able to write this podcast episode for you, or I'm not able to give you that free coaching support, or whatever it might be. I have to disappoint people. But then what's happening is, in my leadership, I'm showing other people it's okay. It's okay to do this. It's okay to protect yourself. It's okay to hold boundaries. It's okay to say no. So maybe the goal isn't to stop disappointing people. Maybe it's to become okay with disappointing the right people at the right time. Because when you stop trying to lead everyone else's life, then you can be the leader of your own life. Isn't that amazing, and isn't that wonderful? So just as a quick recap, today we talked about why disappointing people feels difficult, especially if you've spent years believing that, keeping everybody else happy was your responsibility, or managing other people's emotions or something like that. And we explored how other people are creating these stories and expectations about who they think you should be, how we do this also to other people, and how disappointing other people is sometimes nothing more than just refusing to keep playing a role that is not yours, it does not fit. And we talked about the difference between, like deliberately rebelling or hurting someone and disappointing someone, and why living in alignment with yourself, your true self, is so much more important than avoiding somebody else's temporary discomfort, right? Because each time you say no, it's really an act of reclaiming your own authority. And then we looked at how saying no to other people's expectations can actually create space to discover your own purpose and identity, what you truly want, even if you don't really know what that is yet. So my hope is that you leave this episode seeing disappointment differently, disappointing others, like unappointing them, not as something to fear, but as something that can actually become part of your healing and your freedom. So thank you for being here today. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who maybe has spent a lot of time trying to keep everybody else happy. And if you're ready to understand what's truly keeping you stuck, visit my website at radiate.rise.com and apply for a free root cause assessment and action plan. And I'd love to help you find your next step. Don't forget to check out all the free resources and everything else that could support you. And I'll talk to you next week.